Hello everybody, and welcome to Me and the Cat Do the Scion Vlog. Anne is gone for the night. She is off with some friends at a bachelorette party. Also, at the same time, the light in our room, like over the course of a day, all 4 of those bulbs slowly exploded. I'm pretty sure it's a wiring problem, but the sockets are now broken, and so the room is super dark. Our landlord sucks. But I want to answer some questions today. I'm not really good at writing down the question exactly, so I'm going to say a question, and it's going to kind of sound like a question, and this is really bothering me. Okay, there we go. If it sounds like your question, it was probably your question, just paraphrased. And the first question we have today is, how do you feel about completely taking out associated powers, and I assume epics, from pretty much Scion completely? The idea being, a lot of people talked about this. It doesn't really make sense for me to completely clone your parent. It makes sense that you, especially at heroes, start with some of their powers, and that their powers come easier. The things they're good at, you're good at. For the most part, unless you are specifically trying to completely deviate from your parent at hero, the really big guy who has lightning type powers and can fly, you should be able to guess that that's a Thor dude if he's, blonde and white. And the black one, you should be able to tell that it's Chango. And the guy who is, probably pretty attractive, because they always end up taking attractiveness. They always end up taking appearance. And also has lightning powers, you should probably be able to guess that that's a kid of Zeus. If you don't want to do at least some of the things your parent does, why are you picking that parent? If you're really interested in them. This is the same problem I have with people who want to be, play the kids of Legend 9 gods, or, lower Legend gods, the people who are like, well, I want to be the kid of Nike, because I think Nike's really cool, and Nike has all the stuff I like. Okay, first of all, Nike is such a tiny, there's nothing really to like, unless you just like victory. But there are people that come and they say that. It's like, okay, cool. Well, she probably only has these things. Oh, well, I don't want it then. I said I really like Nike, but I don't like it if it's going to mean that I'm only good at the thing Nike is good at. Because I don't want to suffer for that. But then in the same case, what was it that drew you to Nike in the first place, that made you like Nike, but then you don't want to also do that? I don't understand. I don't understand the point that people are trying to make. I don't get why the split between I like this god, I want to play a child of them, but I don't want to be strictured by the things they're good at. I want to do whatever the fuck I want, but I don't want to, but I still want to be their kid. I don't understand. And then the basic kind of genetic parent-kid idea thing. A lot of people throw around Hercules doesn't have lightning powers. Most parents don't. Their kids that are gods don't do the same thing. And that's true. But they are probably more inclined to do those things, and they choose not. My dad has brown hair. I can't help having brown hair. I could work to change it. Also has brown eyes. I could put in contacts and then not have brown eyes. But that's all going to be extra work. At the base, I'm going to have the things he has. If I want to work harder, I could not have the things he has. But at the same time, while I do have all that, and I have a personality that lends me towards the things he is good at, he's a salesman by trade, I am not a salesman. Although I have similar things and I could lean towards that, I pick a different avenue for that. I think in similar ways, the gods kind of, their kids are not clones of them, but instead aspects of them heightened in different areas, right? So Odin is a war god, and he's got a spear, and he's strong. But he's not super strong, and Although he leads people into battle, you know, like actually battling probably isn't his big thing, but he has a Thor. And then he can throw Thor at things, you know, like, here is the aspect of me that is just strength personified. Meh. I had sex with the earth to make the super strength, and now I have a super strength thing. Also, I think it just fits really well into the story of your character, that whatever you choose to do with it. If you choose to go straight clone of your god, I usually warn people at about late demigod, hey, by the time you get to god, your parent probably isn't going to want you to be a clone, like your pantheon, unless your parent died, probably doesn't need you. So you're going to want to be a little different. You're going to want to have something that differentiates you to focus on. And so far, across the board, we've had no gods that were just clones of their parents. They all had a little bit of the stuff the parent had and a little bit of other stuff. A hero, people tend to be parent clonish, unless they, usually with like one or two other things as their main focus. Unless they specifically are working to not do that. Which I have had some people that are like, I'm taking nothing my parent has, and just working off everything else, which I think is a cool option too. If they're willing to sacrifice for it and really don't want to work with that, then that's cool. And around demigod, they start developing other things. Different things start becoming useful. Like maybe your parent doesn't have war, but you're like, oh my god, you know, Army of One would be so helpful. So I got to buy up all of war. And then once you start buying a purview and you start getting it up there, it's like, well, it kind of seems silly not to keep working on it. And your fate bonds start tying you. Oh god, without the screen on, it got really dark. Your fate bonds start tying you to the new purview you're using. So once you start using it, it kind of becomes a thing that's going to start building up, like, you know, a train speeding along. Until eventually your fate bonds are like, well, you did it all the time, so now we're just buying it for you, and eventually you're now the god of that thing as well. So that was a big, rambly answer to try to vomit out all my ideas on the problem. It's probably too long, I apologize. But basically, I love associated epics and purviews. If I was totally rewriting everything, those would probably still be two of the core tenets that I took from the game. I'm not sure I would do epics the same way. I'm not sure if I would do those attributes the same way. I don't know if I would do all the purviews the same way, but what I would do is that your parent lets you inherit certain powers easier. Like, that's just, I think, such a basic, obvious thing that is very cool and mythic feeling, and ties you to your parent in very direct ways. And I think it works really well from hero to god on the scale of the things come a lot easier. I start to become a different person. By the time I hit god, you know, I'm very different. And I think that follows the path of how most kids work in real life. You know, you start really young and your grandparents say, oh my god, he looks just like you, or oh my god, he acts just like you, or oh my god, I remember when you did that. Little stuff like that as you're growing up, and then by the time you're hitting a teenager, people are noticing the differences between you and your parents. And I think that ramp up is very important. And that's what I got to say there. Let me see. Next question was, hey, I noticed that in your stories you seem to kill a lot of major gods. The question asker was hesitant about killing gods. They worry about how that affects the cosmology, and how that, and you know, not wanting to, they didn't want to say this, but not wanting to piss players off or really surprise players. Like, if a god dies, it's huge. And he's right. At this point in the god game, it's pretty brutal. You know, all the Aesir are gone at this point. And then a lot of most other pantheons are gone as well. To be specific, the ways I have used those deaths in the past, leading up to big events. For example, like the at the very beginning of Ragnarok, when Jotunhammer first fell, Ullr and Skadi died, fighting like a giant Muspel something. It was like 4 years ago, give me a break. Muspel something on the meteor that was hitting Earth, that like stopped it from incinerating Earth completely when it hit, but still started the Fimbulwinter. And that was kind of a little trying to make sense of why exactly Fimbulwinter happened. And if because it's leading into, like, I know why it happens, like, mythologically, from the idea of Norse people worrying about the cold, but then also worrying about the fire. But if two frost gods, or a frost god and a frost giant, die on a meteor that's supposed to spark it all, it kind of like led me to a place of maybe this is why Fimbulwinter happened. The other thing was to, I've used it to make a point about how gods can't always be leaping in to save the hero. And I think that's an important part, because a lot of people, especially if your parent is a guardian parent, most of the stuff you do, like, it kind of doesn't make sense for them to not always save you, because you're an investment. And if it's just the idea of, I think, like, there's a guardian, the high-level guardians, like, you know, throw a bubble from afar or whatever, it would be not much for them to just save you, even from way up in their overworld. So the idea being, when the gods save you, they're putting themselves at risk. They're either appearing on Earth, or they're getting involved in a way in which now their fateful aura is also bringing in things of their level, their legend, that could be around. So, if Athena comes down to save you, or, you know, throws her bubble from the overworld, maybe at the time that she had to do that, she was fighting a Titan, and that was an action that she took, that now she doesn't have an action up where she is, and maybe that caused her to get punched in the face. And starting pretty early on, small versions of that, like heroes saying to their parents, oh, please help me, I need your help, and the parent kind of ignoring them. And then later, getting into worse trouble, and being like, you know I've said I needed you before, but now I really, really need you, please, you know, begging. That's the moment where, like, they feel like they super need him, they blow a legendary deed on it, and they're like, please come help me. And then being like, okay, well, I'll show you the god helping you there, but then look, now the god got punched in the face, or, you know, horrible repercussions happened. So you probably should never do that again. Like, that was your one, and hopefully that showed the rest of the group as well that this isn't a good idea. And then the next time, probably kill a god. To really drive home, because remember, this is the hero story. So although it is important for the cosmology to make sense, and I think gods dying in the cosmology does make sense. Like, that's the reason this war is important, and I'll get to that. For the hero story to matter, and for them really to be on their own, they can get help, they can get birthrights, they can get guidance. But the main things that the story sets out for them, they need to accomplish on their own. And when they don't, not only is that taking away from their legend by having other people do stuff for them, but it's taking away from their story. And whenever they kind of reach out for that, they can't be doing it all the time. For the actions of the heroes doing important things on Earth, building up their legend so that they can join this war, for that to be important, for the gods to risk fate binding on Earth once again, for all of that to matter, the Titan War needs to be deadly as hell. Like, the heroes need to constantly see that they can't, like, there's going to be time for fun in between, and all, like, the gods need to have fun, but this war needs to be a war. Like, you need to be seeing people dying, gods injured, really tough, long, drag-out fights. All of this is probably happening off screen, but the heroes need to be hearing about it. Up towards Demigod, maybe they're seeing it at some point through visions or through other things, because that level of deadliness is what's going to make the war important, raise the stakes, really add that sense of urgency to everything the heroes do. And that's pretty classic writing, acting, any kind of art. You need the sense of urgency there, the sense of this thing needs to happen right now. Because once you're not worrying about it happening right now, or not worrying about the moment, then you get into a lot of, well, you know, maybe I'll take a vacation. Or the worst one is, well, I'm injured. So this injury is going to take a week to heal. So I'm going to chill out for a week, and it doesn't matter. But the real crux of it needs to be, it always matters. Like, this is a war, and people are dying. And when you rest, or when you joke around, there are consequences, because you are in a war. Not to say that there can't be breaks, like there are in all good stories about war and suffering and all that does have breaks of happiness, and the war and the suffering, well, cat, makes those breaks of happiness all the more important. I cannot think of a good literary example right now. I feel like there's probably a really good one in the book about the Jewish girl locked in the attic or the basement during Anne of Green Gables. Nope. Anna Karenina? Nope. You know what I'm talking about, though. You read it in middle school. But anyway, when they had, it was terrifying, and they were all like locked in there and suffering, but when they were able to have a party, or able to have just a really good conversation, those moments suddenly became way more important. And I think that's generally an important part of writing, and through writing, the story itself. Next question was, hey, you're doing the Orisha, and stopping doing the Loa as much, and that's true. What are Eshu's powers going to be? And I don't want to go too much into the specifics, but Eshu is, through our readings, a very Loki-like figure. He's different. He's not Loki, but he does fill that same role of none of the gods are doing this, so he's got like all the things the rest of us aren't doing. The rest of us aren't part of a culture that does this. So we have this one god that does all of these things. So you can expect, off the top of my head, your manipulation type things, your trickery type stuff, and he's also kind of the mouth of the prophet, and he deals with justice and punishment in a way that the other gods don't. So you can expect things along that line. We're finishing up the PSP. Finishing up, I use the term lightly, PSPs are hard, but I don't think it'll be too much longer until it's out. Probably, I would say probably the end of March. I have a convention to go to, and then after that I'll be able to kind of sit down and really work on it. Another person asked, you talked recently about the PSPs and what kind of things you might want to do to make a visual difference on the character sheet that shows the PSPs. And although this is an idea I've liked for a little bit and have been toying with, I don't think, I haven't gone through and really worked on all the PSPs in that way yet. It would require a pretty significant rewriting of most of them, which we aren't ready to do yet, but I plan to do in the future. And the new ones I'm doing that for as I go. But off the top of my head, I don't know if you guys have seen our Greek characters, but Arete is a separate thing out to the side on their abilities. I think on a rewrite I could probably do a little better with that. Jotunblod is the physical stats, not in love with it. Egyptian, I would probably do a soul that they like filled in and did something with somewhere in their character sheet. Excuse me. The African ones we're talking about, a big portion of their mythology is destiny, and how your head is really your path to destiny, and your biggest thing is when you right before you start life as a spirit, you pick a head, and then that head will be your destiny for the rest of your life. And then people who take over your position, like say you're the king, the person that takes over your position eats a little bit of your head, because they're kind of accepting a little bit of your destiny as king as they become king. So I think we'll be working in a framework of having the actual head on there, and then doing augmentations to the head on your character sheet that represent augmentations you're doing to the head in the game. I don't want to get too much into that. We're still pretty rough on a lot of that, and we don't have the specifics for any of it, but that's what we're looking into. Aztecs, I think, need a rewrite. It would probably be something with some sort of maybe sacrifice pool or sacrifice something. Babylonian, I could probably see an augmentation on the purview section of the character sheet. The Bogovi have their virtues tied to other virtues. They have they're like double set of virtues already. And we could probably do a little more with that, but I was starting to lean towards the character sheet change when we started working on Vegovy. So I got some of that in there. But the final question is, and I feel like we've either answered this before, or we've talked to someone about it on the White Wolf forums, but I want to be a god, or I'm looking to make my character into a god of nuclear blasts, nuclear powers. Should I make a homebrew purview, an entire purview that just covers nuclear stuff? Should I just add wounds and knacks to the purviews and attributes that already exist to kind of get my powers? Or is it a horrible idea and I should play a different game? I generally tell people that their ideas are horrible and they should play a different game. It's probably a quote from me from somewhere. I think, especially in modern times, a god of nuclear power is very important and definitely should happen. I mean, if in your campaign that happens, like, don't set out from hero to be the god of nuclear power and then force it. But if, you start out with it, maybe you're a nuclear scientist, and then through demigod, nuclear power becomes more important. If it starts working its way into your mythology, by the end of demigod, that could be something you go for. I think that's very modern, but if by the end of my demigod campaign, the world was destroyed and no one used nuclear power anymore. But if in your world, people still are using that, then that's awesome. And that is something you should go for. Now, how to do it. I definitely know we've talked about this before. But to refresh, you should not make a new whole homebrew purview. That's unnecessary and way too much work for your storytelling. But you can do all the nuclear things you want with birthrights and just augmentations of current powers, not necessarily completely new powers. And our main thing the last time we talked about it was just stunting the current power. The sun is kind of the energy one, the energy purview. I think a ton of stuff in there fits really well. Fire, same thing with the destruction side of it, fits really well. I think small augmentations of those two things are going to get you everywhere you want to go. Really early on, heat stroke, and explaining heat stroke as nuclear energy, possibly even later in the game to make it still useful, doing like maybe it costs a lecture legend, but like you double its effectiveness or something as augmentation that's on a relic that makes it more nuclear power themed. Like instead of the heat, it's like the suffering of a nuke, or maybe it like does something to their cells or something. Heal infect, the infect portion of it, if you got in a lot of health and focused on plague god thing, what is that? Vow of Pestilence. Became really good at heal infect and the other heal boons, so you could just cause massive damage to people, and then just described it as radiation poisoning. A lot of the light and the energy stuff in sun could fit right into the nuclear power idea, and then all of fire with its destruction fits well into the idea of nuclear blast. So I think it is a good idea, and I think it's a modern concept that can work, but I don't think you need to what's the phrase? Rewrite the box? That doesn't make any sense. Whatever the phrase is that is like completely changing something so that you don't need to do it anymore, that phrase is what I mean. You don't need to rewrite everything to make this idea work. You can make it work with the powers that are there, and just using them in different ways, with different ideas. And then I think your god track will look really nice. Like you have, he's got some fire, and he's got some sun, and he's got some health. Maybe he's kind of focusing on all three as his god, or maybe he's working on something else. Maybe darkness to represent the blackness after the explosion, or the complete irradiate or lack of light when it goes horribly wrong. There's an explosion that cuts off all the electricity. I don't like new gods who are like, well, I'm god of fire, so I'm just buying fire. Like, it is way more interesting to be a god of a different concept, that the purviews work together and fit nicely, and then you're the god of this concept that these other purviews work towards. Instead of saying, well, I have fire, war, and health, so I'm the god of fire, war, and health. We're just picking a small aspect of each of those. It's way more interesting if you can pull it off, and it's hard to do, but putting those concepts together in an idea that works well. And so that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think you should do it. But I don't think you need to rewrite the wheel, rework. Nope, it's gone. And that's all I have to say, too. I've been on here way too long. Hopefully my wife is home soon and not dying in a snowstorm. And hopefully I can get this up onto the internet in some way in the near future. But yeah, this will probably be up a little later tonight. Thank you all. Have a good one. Next week, Ann and I will be back here together answering questions.